Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Quick Spin, the Autoweek podcast that dives into the essence of the automobile. Today, we're joined by the great Patrick Carone from the seat of the Genesis GV80. That's right, the new Genesis SUV. You can take a look at this Genesis SUV on our Instagram page right now. That's at Autoweek USA. And while you're there, don't forget to flash over to our Facebook page and like and subscribe. That way you get all of the great Autoweek content on the daily. We're going to talk about this 2021 Genesis in just a second. But first, we've got to pay the bills. Our friends at Road & Trek have some big news to share. The premium lifestyle magazine for the automotive enthusiast is now fully loaded. Become a member of the Trek Club and receive 6 supersized double issues a year, plus access to digital content, dozens of partner privileges, exclusive invites to editorial events, and first dibs on insider automotive events both online and around the world. Hop on in by visiting roadandtrack.com/join. That's ROADANDTRACK.com/JOIN. And Patrick, tell me about this Genesis GV80, an SUV.
Yeah, this is the big luxury SUV from the new-ish luxury brand from Hyundai, Genesis, and I had it for the long holiday weekend, and I think it's a wonderful machine, and I think that anyone who's looking for high levels of luxury but doesn't want to pay a high level of price should definitely think about this thing.
And speaking of luxury, you do this thing, and I think it's fantastic, where you kind of catch your initial experience of the car you jump into, and we're going to cut to that right now.
Sliding into this GV80 for the first time, and man, I am impressed right off the bat. This thing has Rolls-Royce rug. For those who have not been blessed to have been able to drive a Rolls, the carpet is particularly thick to the point that you can feel it even if you're, wearing your shoes. And this Genesis has exactly that. I love the 2-spoke steering wheel. Super old school. It reminds me of my grandpa's old Cadillacs from the 80s. And the seat is very comfortable. And the thing that really strikes me also is how simple all of the controls are. These days there's 1,000 levers and knobs and buttons for everything. But this seems very simple, just a few all dial oriented switches. So we'll see how it works, how intuitive they are on the road. But just from an aesthetic point of view, it's great.
Now, Patrick, we're going to get to the facts and figures here in a little bit. But interior on a car like this is super important. And with Genesis, this being Genesis's first SUV, a first impression is almost if you don't do it right now, you're not gonna get a fan base. And from what it sounds like, Genesis did it right.
Yeah, they knocked it right out of the park with the interior, like no question about it. I will say that subsequent to recording that, I did do the all-important take off my shoes and rub my socks around the carpet test. And I will say that it's not quite Rolls-Royce softness. Like, it's got that nice thickness, but I think Rolls uses some sort of probably sheep that they develop just for its soft fur on theirs. And so it's not quite as plush as that. But that said, you still do feel like a luxury experience from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet.
And to be fair, I think that this GV80 does not carry a $500,000 price tag like you'd expect from our friends over at Rolls.
Yeah, they're not. It's not really breeding sheep kind of money. But just to your point, like opening it up for the first time, and I got to tell you, people would just like come up to me in this car. You would think that I was driving something more exotic, but I had a couple people, more than I've even had when I've had a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, ask me, "What is this?" Like, "Oh my God, this is the Genesis SUV. Let me look around." Like, people are very interested in this car.
It is a very striking car. It carries itself really well from the picture. I mean, I haven't driven one, let's be very clear, but I have seen one at the Chicago Auto Show, and it definitely has stage presence.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, and it's interesting. And, I was thinking about this, like, a lot of, obviously, everyone is, like, making their own SUVs now, but they're kind of beholden to whatever, like, the design language is for that particular automaker, right? So, like, the Bentayga, I'm not a huge fan of that vehicle's design, but they sort of have to make it look kind of like that just in order for people to see it and be like, well, that's a Bentley. You know what I mean? But I feel like, at least with Genesis, they're kind of able to do more of a clean slate. So they could kind of, make it however they want to a larger degree, I think, than, all of these other brands. And I think that freedom really let them design something beautiful and unique.
Let's talk about specs real fast. Was this the 3.5 liter V6 powered one or the 2.4 liter inline 4?
This was the 3.5 liter 6.
A nice 370 horsepower V6.
Plenty of oomph, plenty of power. It's not, I keep on mentioning Bentley because, it's super aspiring to be something that might compete with, that level of SUV. And honestly, it's not a joke to even speak of that comparison, but, no, it's not like a 500 horsepower V8. And I think they have one with the W12 as well in the Bentleys. Look, it's a turbocharged 6, but it is quick. You go 0 to 60, I think a hair over 5 seconds. Plenty of passing power, anything you need. It's you feel it. It's fast.
And we're going to cut to that in a little bit of you driving this thing. But real fast, I want to jump to something else that you pre-recorded. Something that, to me, is a little terrifying, but you be the judge.
Why, hello there. No, I'm not in a busy French cafe. I'm just relaxing in my GV80, enjoying some of the ambient noises that they have on offer. Garçon, coffee, please. No, this is actually really great. They have all kinds of things, like the more traditional things like rainy day and warm fireplace, but my personal favorite is Snowy Village. I like this one because I like to imagine I'm being chased by a Yeti. Anyway, all of the sounds in this car are great, not just the fake snowmen. Everything has this great feel and heft to it, the way that the doors close, the way the doors lock, even the turn signal. Here, let me get the turn signal going. It's such a nice, dignified noise. Plus, the little camera goes on either in the front left or the front right, depending on which direction you're going, which is a very cool feature. And that's the thing about this car. Just as you enjoy it, as you explore it, there are all of these little niceties that pop up. Very, very cool. And it just makes the whole thing seem super duper premium.
The ambient sounds, that's terrifying to me. What was it like to experience that in real life?
Well, I didn't know that was a feature. I was just kind of playing around with the big, it's like a 14.5-inch touchscreen. I was just kind of playing around and seeing what they have on there, because there's always weird stuff you find these days. And they had one there for sounds of nature. I'm like, all right, we got to try this. And I'm like, hey, maybe sometimes you want to feel like you're sitting in the middle of a cafe. Actually, now that I think about it, it's probably really good if you're trying to lie to someone and you don't want them to know that you're on the road somewhere. So maybe that's what this is all about. It's just sets you up to make any kind of fake situation you need.
But like I said a few seconds ago, you did pre-record yourself taking this out for a little bit of a hoon, they could call it, or a holler, a little bit of a drive. We're going to go to that right now.
I am zipping around some back roads in upstate New York on a very important mission to pick up some rye whiskey. And it is very enjoyable driving the GV80. It's got plenty of power. It's got a twin turbo V6, about 375 horsepower, I believe. Car and Driver tested it. 0 to 60, 5.3 seconds, and I believe it. It's got plenty of power. Right now I'm in sport mode. I'm kind of going between sport and comfort. There's definitely a little bit more responsiveness with sport, but not, too much. It's still clear that you're in a luxury car. And honestly, driving this thing is totally wonderful.
If there's a young person in your life who's really into cars, give them the gift of R&T Crew, the ultimate subscription box by Road & Track for kids ages 6 to 10. Every other month, a box is delivered to their door and is stuffed with cool accessories, fun activities, and a magazine chock full of facts, stories, games, and more. Sign up now and receive the all-new Crushin' It issue and enter the code AUTOWEEK for 10% off an annual box subscription. Just head to rtcrew.com, that's rtcrew.com, and use the code AUTOWEEK. And it seems like it. But Patrick, can you elaborate on how the car handles, how it feels, and how it stacks up to the other luxury SUVs that you've experienced?
Handles great, and you get like just the right balance of road feel and smoothness, if that makes sense. Even when you're on kind of twisty, turny roads, I felt totally confident. It doesn't feel like you're, driving a wet sponge. It's responsive in just the right amount that you'd want. I know, I feel like it sounds like I'm being like extra effusive, but it really felt great to drive.
Well, I believe it. Genesis has really been knocking some stuff out of the park lately, and with their first SUV, I expected nothing less.
No, for sure. And like what I was saying too before about like the little like niceties, little extras, like things that like you don't expect. So for example, I picked up the car in Manhattan, and so I'm, there driving on my block. And I guess I was like kind of looking around the inside of the car. And then suddenly I hear this, again, a very polite little ding that, and then I looked up on the dashboard and it says, the car in front of you has pulled away. And the most impressive thing about that, besides it being a cool and useful feature, is there was literally a New York City taxi cab behind me. The car knew that the car pulled away before the taxi was able to honk. And that's some real world like testing or something, man, because it was like, oh, like I can avoid getting honked at by taxis all the time. This is great.
Now, I will have to look at Genesis to see if they reached out to the New York Taxi Association to co-develop this car, but that's really interesting.
That's the thing. It's just like cool little things like that, like all over, like. And, we're lucky. We get to drive lots of cars. But the little things like that, you're like, wow, like someone is really trying to make the best, luxury vehicle for a pretty crazy price. And that's really my takeaway from the car.
And before we get into the hard-hitting questions that I'm going to ask you here in a second, what is the price on this bad boy? I know that people like to hear that.
Yeah, so the one that I had, the grand total, $66,475. That includes destination charges, and I guess it was a nice silver. It was an extra $400 charge, but yeah. So again, this is the 6-cylinder, so that's and pretty much with everything as far as I can tell, looking at the Monroney. Yeah, so it's about 65, but.
That sounds like an insane bargain, and I'm not doing this because I'm getting paid by Genesis to say that. I mean, that sounds like a legitimate deal.
Totally. And that's kind of like how I kept on saying to my wife, I'm just like, wow, this is like amazing for the price. It kind of makes me think like, boy, like if you have one of these in your garage and you get the new Corvette, you have like two fantastic things that are such great bargains. And like, you really could live as if you have like, a Bentley and a Ferrari in there. Look, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it's pretty close.
And that is, for 60 grand, hard to argue against. But no, Patrick, people come to Quick Spin because I ask the hard-hitting questions. And it has come to the time that I must ask the most important thing. What is the essence of the GV80?
I mean, look, if you want real luxury, like a real feeling of a premium product that so much thought has gone into, and at least for my brief time in it, excellent craftsmanship, and you're less worried about having a name like BMW or Mercedes or Lexus or whatever. If you're okay with having this kind of new brand that I think is very cool, get this. Like, I don't really know how else to say it. Like, it's a really fantastic SUV.
Well, Patrick, I think that's a sound place to wrap this one up. Don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get this bad boy. Drop us a 5-star review. Also, don't forget to head over to our Facebook. That way we can make sure you get all of the fantastic content from Autoweek.com. But most importantly, and I can't stress this one enough, thank you for listening. Without your listenership, none of this could happen.